We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I'm here today with Pete Schnepp, and he is a private investor. Now, this is really probably going to be, we've had a couple other private investors that have brought the angle of being in multiple syndications or multiple LLCs as LPs, and we've had a few of those on here, but we have not had anybody quite like Pete yet, and we'll get into that here in a minute. And it has to do with how he invests or what money he uses to invest, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to hit on a number of different things because I know there's a lot of aspiring syndicators that listen to this show that want to know what goes on in the head of people like you, Pete. What makes you act on an investment over a different investment, I guess? Or what questions do you ask when you're investigating whether or not you want to invest? So anyway, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great, Casey. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely, man. We're always glad to have our friends in Phoenix on here. And you are probably sitting in one of the hottest real estate markets, really, I guess, known to man. We were, like I was telling you prior to the show, we were out there in November, and it was just, man, it's just like, there's just like this incredible buzz in the city, just about everything. That might have cooled off a little bit with the crypto kind of dive that it's taken the last, say, month or 45 days, because I know there was what a lot of the Uber drivers called crypto millionaires. I guess it seemed like there was like 18 and 20-year-old kids riding around in Lamborghinis and McLarens, and I saw some of that myself, like with my own eyes. I saw that. That wasn't just like a news blip where they went and hunted that guy out. I saw some kid driving around in a McLaren, and I was like, what in the hell? And so anyway, but I would like for you to give us just a little bit of background on yourself, and then why did you kind of choose real estate over other investment opportunities?
Yeah, sure. So I own a couple other businesses. My primary company is a painting service business that I started 15 years ago. And then just 2 years ago, I started a pest control business as well with my brother. I started buying properties. Well, my first one was I bought it in 2007 with my buddy, and right before the crash, and then I held on to that as long as I could, and then short sold in 2012. But after that, I bought another property with my wife's credit, like our first house, my new wife at the time, and we moved into it. And, I had always wanted to kind of build up a rental portfolio. It goes back to being in college, reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like a lot of people. It just seemed like out of reach until I started doing it. But our primary house became our first rental house, right? And then there was a conversation that we had with some older folks at that point. It was somebody that we knew, their grandparents, that were fairly well off. And they said, hey, you guys should try to buy one property a year.
Yep.
And at the time I was like, holy shit, how does somebody afford a second house when they already have one?
Yep.
But that resonated with me, and that kind of became the goal at the time. And then things have just grown since then, right? And so ever since then, with all the information out there on podcasts like you do and just on YouTube, and you could be in real estate university every day, while you're going to work or driving around. And so I just ingrained myself in information and pushed through the fears of buying one property at a time. and was very deliberate in living below our means. Every dollar we had saved up had a purpose, and we bought things because they were needs, not wants. And so we just focused on saving and saving and saving until we had enough down payment for the next property, and then doing it again and again and again. And here we are 10 years later. um, at the moment, I just sold a property, but we've got 14 total properties, a total of 40 doors, and it's building up to be a pretty nice little private portfolio.
Man, that's great. And of the 14 properties, and how many total doors does that equal?
40 right now.
Okay, so it's around so about so they're average of triplex, I guess, if you will, right?
Well, yeah, about half of them are single family and half of them are small multifamilies. We've got some couple of fourplexes. We've got an 8 unit. I just sold a 10 unit. Um, so it's a mixture.
Sure, sure. So are they all right there locally in Phoenix?
Yeah, Phoenix greater area.
Okay,
Thought about
Scottsdale,
spreading
something
out.
like.
Not Scottsdale. It's tough to cash flow there. I'm more of a C class
Okay,
investor looking for cash flow. And so Mesa is a good spot for us. We've got a couple in Gilbert, one in West Phoenix. So just on the outskirts of Phoenix.
cool. So you mentioned before the show that you have invested in syndications, and of course, this is the part that I want to get uh, down to is you had mentioned that you use your IRA to invest in these things, and I guess first and foremost, what did it take to get your IRA set up to invest?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to say it was hard. It's just there's some steps you got to go through. Little things like that. It's funny. It's like a barrier of entry that most people just won't, go the extra mile to take the hour out of your day today to do it and 30 minutes tomorrow to do. But I had met a couple other people that had done that. And so they basically put me in touch with the right people at there's basically two big players in town, companies that do that. I forget what they're called. They're not intermediaries, but they're firms that specialize in self-directed IRAs. And you just reach out to them and say, "Hey, how do I do this?" And they walk you through it. There's paperwork you got to fill out. And at the time, I had funds at Vanguard, and the self-directed company is called Vantage, both with a V. But basically, they're like, "Okay, well, here's the paperwork you need to send Vanguard." And so I sent it to Vanguard, and then you got to wait, and they need something else, and then it takes a week or so and they wire all the funds over and boom, it's done. So it's not hard. It's just paperwork, really.
Yeah, yeah. And that's very interesting when you start talking about how easy it is, because so many people don't really know that they can do those things, because it's like people become separated from their retirement accounts. They put money in their retirement accounts and then become separated from it, and they just trust that somebody somewhere on some level is investing their money and is doing what's best for them.
Right.
So with that being said, it definitely begs the question of like we need to get the education there for people to understand that they can do these things. Now, with that being said, so you got your IRA set up, you got it set up with a custodian, and you got everything in place for you to be able to invest privately into private equity deals. What did you, when you first started looking for potential investment opportunities, what did that look like and how did you go about it?
I mean, quite honestly, I wasn't really looking at the time. I got introduced to the operator by somebody else that I knew. So it was kind of a personal referral. At the time, I was actually investing in mobile home notes, like one or two at a time, through a company that paired up investors with people that were buying mobile homes in like nicer mobile home parks, chattel loans. and I decided that that wasn't really enough return. But he knew another guy that was buying mobile home parks, and he just connected us. I wasn't really looking, and so I talked to him, and at the time, I kind of like that industry, mobile home parks. I really do like it actually, and I wasn't shopping around. I didn't have 5 or 10 syndication deals on my desk that I was analyzing. Honestly, it came down to me meeting this guy, and I liked him. I trusted him. I knew the industry. He showed me the parks that they had already bought. He was like, "Yeah, I'll put you on the list for the next one if you're interested." And so the next one came out. Looked at the pro forma and the paperwork, and for me, it was like, well, do I keep my money at Vanguard with some giant mutual fund and all the shadiness that goes on with these big corporate companies that I have no control over, or do I invest with somebody that I know, like, and trust now at this point in an
Sure.
industry that I'm a lot more familiar with? And that's what it came down to.
Wow. And that's pretty interesting. So what when you looked at the pro forma, what were some of the things that really jumped out to you as saying, I mean, obviously the returns. I try to get around that and say what was maybe a secondary item that jumped out to you and you were like, man, I really think this is for me.
I mean, the returns don't blow me away. You know what I mean? I can make a much better return investing on my own. The problem is with an IRA, I can't do that. And there
Yeah.
wasn't enough for me. There's not enough in there for me to buy a property outright without getting a loan. So it gets a little bit
Yep.
tricky, right? And so it really came down to, do I want my money tied up in a mutual fund or an ETF? Or do I think over the long haul, I'll make a better return with this operator in this asset class? And that's
Yeah.
what it came down to.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Well, and that's a kind of, I guess, the way a lot of people look at it. Now, did you have to be an accredited investor to be in that deal, or was that somebody you said that you had a prior relationship with?
That's a good question. I do believe I was considered an accredited, but I'm not positive. I mean, the entry point was only at that time. I think it was you could buy a share for 25 grand. And so
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I did the first one, if I did 25 or 50 on the first one, but I did like a very minimal amount, and then I've bought into 3 or 4 more deals with them since, and they've since sold the first property, and you know I mean, probably like most indicators that bought at that time and sold at that time, the returns blew their projections out of the water, right? I don't know if they
Sure,
did anything
sure.
special. It was just timing, but their communication is really good, and I like that ongoing, like the quarterly reports and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and that's I think one of the big keys to syndication and going into syndication is from the syndicator side is making sure that the communication is prompt when it is promised. So if you're promising quarterly communication, then it needs to be quarterly or a few days before, just to ensure that everybody is on the same page, everybody knows what you're doing, and everybody knows how to make how the asset is performing and if there's anything that's alarming that needs to be discussed or talked about. So you had mentioned that you recently just sold the one there in Phoenix. That you did you say it was 10 doors that you sold?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, and you were gonna, and you, I know you and I had talked about the potential of doing a 1031 versus just hanging on to the money, paying the taxes, and moving on. What are you going to look, or maybe kind of branch out into any other syndications, or potentially look for any other investments to step into?
Um, like, not unless it's through my IRA.
I got you.
If it's through the IRA, most of it's tied up with that company right now. But if they sell
Sure.
another deal and it comes back out, I might explore a different asset class or a different operator. But I'm happy with them. I wouldn't mind keeping it with
Yeah,
them.
and
Yeah,
it's kind of like why jump off the winning horse if it's been winning
right.
so far and you know your money's safe and and the other thing like you said when you're in control of that capital, it makes you sleep a little better at night. I'm sure, knowing that you are responsible for getting the stuff fixed on the asset that need to be fixed, and you know what's going on. You know when the rent's paid. You know when how much the insurance is, and so on and so on and so on, and the laundry list of things that goes with that. But that's definitely a good way to be, I guess, if that's the model that you're modeling. Do you do anything else? Do you work anywhere else? Is this some kind of is this a side business, or is this pretty much what you do all the time?
So I do have two other businesses.
Oh, you said that. I mean, yep, yep, completely. And then
Right.
and
So
then
yeah, I mean, that's been the good thing is all these years I don't need to. I'm not living off the cash flow, so that just keeps building up for the next deal or for improvements, whatever it might be.
sure.
But yeah, hopefully one day I'll just live off the rents. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, especially you mentioned you had a pest control business, man. Talk about cash flow. That's one of the most, at least out east here. We have a good bit of termite activity and a lot of termite companies. A lot of people make some serious money um, doing pest control. So
Yeah,
but what does the future look like for you in your environment? Obviously, everything is so high out there right now. That
yeah.
are you thinking, hey, I'm going to maybe sit on the sidelines here for a little bit, unless a good deal kind of maybe rears its head up and is just looking for capital, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm watching the market and it doesn't look good, but the prices aren't adjusting. I'm making offers. I made an offer a couple of days ago, but I mean, you look at properties that even the off market ones, the sellers just aren't really selling at a price that makes sense to buy at. They're not. You can't cash flow. So if you're going to buy something, even on the outskirts and that needs to be rehabbed and it needs all this work, you're barely breaking even. So there's been I was reading the local reports, the Cromford report that analyzes all the data, and in the last 6 weeks, we've seen Phoenix has seen the most dynamic shift in supply and demand that they've experienced in since the year 2000. So the
Yeah.
demand has pulled back across the board. Supply is coming to market, but the prices aren't really adjusting yet. So I'm in limbo. I'd like to buy something, but I'm not going to force it. But it's going to be, I've got this money from that sale that I'm trying to 1031 because I'm a real estate guy and I'm trained to not pay taxes. So I think it's going to be harder. I have come to terms that I will pay taxes rather than force a deal. But
Well,
still going to be hard.
one common mistake from the real estate sales standpoint, which is where I started many years ago. And one common mistake with 1031s people make is they get jumpy. It's like as soon as they sign those papers, and before the ink even dries on the transfer documents, it's like they are balls to the wall looking for somewhere to spend this money. And I
Mhm.
have seen many people overpay for the replacement asset. And it's like, why did you even sell the original asset if you were just going to turn around and step into an overpayment of the next asset? And
Yeah.
there's something there that when that clock starts ticking, man, they lose their minds.
That's
And
part of why the prices have gone up so high because everybody's been 1031ing for the last couple of years, and that just keeps
yeah,
driving prices higher.
yeah, and it's done the same thing to farm ground on the agricultural side of things. It's definitely been, it's definitely forced some things higher probably than what they should be. So it's the 10 again. So, but you have some time. If you have an intermediary that didn't charge you a lot to put your money in there, Like for instance, here we've got a local intermediary that it's a bank that will take it. And I think they charge $795 to park the money. It sits there, gains interest for what is it, however many days that is, then their initial identification period. And then following the identification period, obviously it'll gain interest until you actually close on the asset or withdraw the money. But it just, again, it's not a life or death situation, but it just goes to prove or goes to show the psychology behind us writing unnecessary checks to the government. Like people would rather take a loss than they would give the government one extra red cent. And it's understandable to a certain degree, but then on the other side, it's like where does that become where does that become questionable, I guess is what I'm getting at. So
Mhm.
all right, so where are we headed now? I mean, like you said, you've put some offers on some things. Are you do you do your own underwriting and your own kind of projections and so on? Do you have a model you use for that?
I do, yeah. And I just found it on Google, honestly, 6, 7 years ago or something. It's a multifamily like underwriter spreadsheet, 10-year analyzer, and I've been using it ever since. It's pretty solid. I make some tweaks for different. It's just a straight up like buy and hold simulator. So then I'll make some tweaks if I'm planning on doing a big capital improvement and a refinance or something to see the numbers. But that definitely helps me. Knowing your numbers helps give you confidence. That's for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And especially if you have, because that was always one thing that I was lacking on in my the early years of my career was the projections. And then and rather than just simple, because early on in my career I was buying for cash flow. I was like cash flow period. It didn't matter what it was. If something was cash flowing, like we actually have some assets that that don't, what am I going to try to that pay for themselves in like a couple of years here locally. And there's some rundown slumlord kind of houses. And man, when I first got in business, I was like, yeah, I can't buy enough of these. And then it took about 10 or 12 of those to really, you see all this hair that's missing. That's a big reason why. It made me pull it out constantly. And so, that was just one of those things. But hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cashflow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show. Anyway, so when you're looking at investing and you're looking at sitting there, whether or not, are you using some outside bank financing as well?
Yeah, so I did traditional Fannie Freddie loans up till I got 10 mortgages, and then they cut you off. And so that
Yep.
was maybe a year or two ago. And then I started looking for portfolio loans. And I
Okay.
got teamed up with, I got a couple of, I got two or three resources now. Um, and it started with just calling banks, and it's weird how many of them won't even talk to you. They don't do it, or they're only doing like really big deals. But then there was also a broker that I got connected with, like a commercial mortgage broker, and he introduced me to another few banks. So I've got three kind of go-to banks right now. I'm in the process of doing a cash out refinance on a property that I bought a year ago, and it was really easy now that I've got a relationship. I just shopped it out to those three, and one of them gave me the best terms, and we're locking the rate today.
Sure.
Commercial rates are
Good
lower
deal.
than residential right now, which is I can't remember that happening in the past, at
Yeah.
least in my career.
It's kind of like when diesel used to be cheaper than gas. You never in a million years thought you'd see it the other way around. And man, it sure is. But yeah, commercial rates are really good right now, and I think they're going to have to keep them that way from a on an institution, well, from a government level to the institutional level, simply to keep this thing from just really going south and staying staling out. I think they're going to have to keep some of that profit held back to the owners rather than going towards the interest, just to keep things floating. I mean, honestly.
We'll see. We're in
So
for some changes, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah, I definitely think so. So, well, listen, we've kind of expanded and gone through several different things, and several different angles from the private investor standpoint, which is again a lens or an aspect that we don't get on this show real often. With folks that are actually looking to invest their own money into deals and the questions that they ask, and like yourself, when you're looking at things as just a private investor, things look a whole lot different than they do when you're actually like us investing with investor funds, if you will. And when we're negotiating, and it's all sounds wonderful and it's all great when we're negotiating preferential treatment with for our investors and so on and so forth. But then when it actually comes down to saying, hey, what kind of questions are you asking the people that we're investing with so that we keep a good idea of what's going on? And you hit on something there that I talk about all the time when I'm talking to a group, whether I'm talking on my podcast, whatever the case is. But you said, I know, liked, and trusted this guy, and that is the number one thing that really draws people in from a marketing perspective. People have to know, like, and trust you, and you have about a half of a second to score that relationship or it's gone. And that's so important. And I had to go back and make note that you had kind of discussed that. So anyway, well, Pete, listen, we have a couple of questions that we ask every guest that comes on the show, and the first one being, what is the best book that you have either recently read or are currently reading?
Uh, the book that I'm currently reading, I mean, I read a lot of books, but I'm reading a business book right now called The Four Obsessions of a, what is it called? The Four Disciplines of an Obsessed Executive, I think. Something like that. And
Okay.
it's in a story format, and it's way better than I thought it was going to be. It has nothing to do with real estate. It has everything to do with building an organization, and it's phenomenal. I want to see the name of it real quick. The Four Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive. Great story, and it's actually I listened to them all on Audible. It's only like a 3 or 4 hour book, so
Yeah.
really good one. I highly recommend it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right. What is a dream vacation that you have either taken or hope to take?
I just went to Iceland earlier this year, and that was a bucket list trip, and it was phenomenal. So that was if you get an experience, if you get a chance to go to Iceland, you got to do it. And I did, and we jumped on board, and then we had an opportunity to come up to book a trip to Ireland next year. So that is booked, and we're just waiting.
Man, that's awesome. I remember my wife and I went to Italy about 2 or 3 months ago, and when we were looking at trips, so I'm kind of a map on a dartboard kind of guy. Like but that dartboard is Google Flights, which gives you prices. And I remember you could fly into, is it Helsinki or something like that? How do you say that? Or is
I
it
don't know that
Oslo?
town.
What's the in Iceland? I'm trying to think of the town
We
in
went to
Iceland.
Reykjavik.
Yeah, that's right. Reykjavik. That's right. You could fly in there for just virtually no. I mean, it was just virtually nothing to fly there, and like you could fly there cheaper than you could stay in your house for a night. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And so we looked at all kinds of different places. Ultimately, ended up just saying, "Hey, let's go ahead and get Italy crossed off and go check it out." So, but man, that's wonderful. And then Ireland, that's on my bucket list as well. And this is always a question that a lot of times either reinvigorates something that I want to do on my bucket list or adds to it. Because anytime I ask this question, people are like, yeah, we did this, this, and this. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Let's do it. So anyway, all right. Well, listen, Pete, we want to thank you for being on the show today. I want to thank you for providing a fresh perspective to the people out there that are listening. And I'm not sure. I usually ask people for contact information if somebody wanted to reach out to you. Maybe they heard something that they talked to you. But I know in this case, with you being just a private investor, you may not want to. If you don't care if somebody emails you or whatever, you might give us your email address. Either way, I'm not going to hold it against you or for you. I just wanted you to know that opportunity is available. And but we do want to thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, I'm always welcome to chat. I'm a private investor. I'm not really looking to raise money or anything, but if anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to talk. Best way to find me is I got a website with my name on it, PeteSchnepp.com. And there you can learn a little bit about me and my businesses, connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn. It's all right there.
Awesome, man. Well, good deal. And listeners, if you would, as always, head down and give us a 5-star review and leave a comment if you like today's episode. And because we always want to try to improve, we always want to try to bring value to your day. And whether that be through real estate investing or helping you decide what to do with your financial position. And again, Pete, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Okay.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.